A young Prince Charles rests his head on his hand, looking bored during his mother's lengthy coronation ceremony in 1953. It seems even a future king couldn't escape the tediousness of a long, formal event. Back in 2000, the Dubai Marina was little more than a vast stretch of sand with a newly dug canal. In less than a single generation, that same spot was transformed into one of the most densely packed skylines on the planet. Fresh off her honeymoon with Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn Monroe performs for a massive crowd of U.S. troops in Korea in February 1954. She later called the experience the highlight of her career, bringing a touch of Hollywood to the front lines. During World War I, women on the home front stepped up to fill essential jobs, like this operator of an electric baggage cart at a London station. These women became the backbone of the British war effort, keeping the country's transport and factories running. In a rare quiet moment, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. relaxes at home watching President Lyndon B. Johnson on television. The two leaders had a complex relationship, often clashing in private while working towards the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. Director Steven Spielberg poses with one of the animatronic puppets used to create his iconic character, E.T. It reportedly took a team of 12 people to operate the various parts of the alien, bringing it to life long before the days of widespread CGI. Jamie Lee Curtis poses for a witty roadside photo in the early 1980s, shortly after Halloween made her a household name. She always had a sharp sense of humor about her image, which made her a fan favorite beyond just the horror genre. An electric street sweeper from the early 1900s hits the streets of Berlin, representing a leap in municipal technology. These early machines were slow and cumbersome, but they were the first step in replacing the manual labor that had kept city streets clean for centuries. The expression on this soldier's face from World War I is a harrowing example of what was then called shell shock. Medics of the era struggled to understand the condition, a brutal psychological wound caused by the intense stress of the trenches. Taking a photo inside the U.S. Supreme Court has always been strictly forbidden, making this 1932 shot incredibly rare. To capture it, photographer Dr. Eric Salomon faked a broken arm and hid a small camera inside his sling. A young Simon Cowell is seen here in the 1980s, long before he became the famously harsh judge on American Idol. Back then, he was a music consultant and record producer trying to find the next big pop hit. Colonel Sanders himself serves up his famous chicken, something he did often as the face of the brand in the 1960s. Even after selling the company, he traveled over 200,000 miles a year visiting restaurants to ensure his recipe was being followed correctly. Known as the enthusiast girl, Vivian Bales sits on her 1929 Harley-Davidson, the bike she rode for a 5,000-mile solo trip. She became a cover girl for Harley's magazine, breaking conventions for women in the Prohibition era. Two dapper gentlemen walked the streets of Cambridge in 1926, wearing the fashionable +4s of the era. These baggy knickers, which ended 4 inches below the knee, were a staple of university and sporting life in the Roaring '20s. Jack Nicholson flashes his famous grin in the late 1970s, during the peak of his reign as a Hollywood powerhouse. This was right in his classic run of films like Chinatown and his Oscar-winning turn in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A rare, candid shot of Marilyn Monroe shows her enjoying a casual moment in the pool in 1960. It's a striking contrast to the carefully crafted, glamorous image she presented to the public. Even on the brutal march towards Berlin in 1945, Soviet soldiers of the Red Army took time for a moment of culture. An acrobatic troupe performs for the troops, using the top of a T-34 tank as their stage. While filming the James Bond movie Moonraker in 1979, Roger Moore pilots a very special Venetian gondola. The boat was a motorized prop used in the film's famous chase scene, complete with a hidden hovercraft feature. President Lyndon B. Johnson signs the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964, officially outlawing discrimination. Watching him from the front row is Martin Luther King Jr., the man who fought relentlessly for this very moment. A soldier says goodbye to his sweetheart at New York's Penn Station in 1943 before heading off to war. This single, poignant kiss captured the heartache and uncertainty faced by millions on the home front. The original Michelin Man mascots from the early 1900s had a strange, unsettling appearance. They were white because tires at the time were a natural off-white color, before companies started adding carbon black for durability. Manhattan Project physicist Harold Agnew casually holds the plutonium core of the Nagasaki atomic device in 1945. He was part of the scientific team on the flight and brought the core along in a briefcase as a safety measure. Scottish Highlanders take a moment of rest in a World War I trench, their traditional kilts a stark contrast to the mud and modern rifles. The cold, wet, and unsanitary conditions of the trenches were often as dangerous as enemy fire. A brand new 1958 Edsel convertible is proudly displayed at the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas. Despite the glitzy launch, the Edsel would become one of the biggest and most expensive car flops in American automotive history. Between takes for Return of the Jedi, Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill hang out in the Yuma Desert, which stood in for Tatooine. Fisher's famous costume was notoriously uncomfortable, so she often covered up with a robe or jacket whenever the cameras stopped rolling. A rare photo from the 1970s shows Stevie Wonder without his trademark sunglasses while working in the studio. This was his classic period, a time of intense creativity where he wrote, produced, and played nearly every instrument on his albums. Naturalist William Beebe peers out from the bathysphere, a pioneering deep-sea vessel he co-created in the 1930s. He and his partner made dives to a record half-mile deep in this steel ball, which was simply dangled from a ship by a steel cable. Following the news of Joseph Stalin's passing in 1953, a Washington, D.C. restaurant put up a sign for a unique celebration. They offered free borscht to all comers, a public display of relief at the end of a tyrant's reign. An inventor in 1971 presents a peculiar battery-powered wellness device intended for women. The unusual contraption claimed to promote circulation and firmness through a series of gentle vibration. A teenage Grace Kelly poses for a photo shortly after graduating from high school before Hollywood fame. She was already working as a model to pay her way through the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. A Soviet soldier returns home at the end of World War II, his arms open wide for his ecstatic daughter. This single moment of pure joy was the reunion millions of families dreamed of through years of brutal conflict. Swimmers cool off at the El Rancho Vegas in 1942, the very first resort built on the dusty highway that would become the Las Vegas Strip. Long before the mega casinos, this was the spot that started it all for the city. Fleetwood Mac's Stevie Nicks warms up backstage with the Splits during their massive Rumors tour in 1978. Beyond her famous shawls and mystical stage presence, she had a background in ballet and dance. French veterans from World War I, known as Les Gueules Cassées, or the Broken Faces, attend a formal dinner. These men, who suffered horrific facial injuries, formed a tight-knit association to support one another after the war. The prototype Space Shuttle Enterprise is carefully transported down a California highway in 1977. This full-scale test orbiter never went to space, but was crucial for glide and landing tests before the first official flight. A 1950s homeowner shows off the ultimate piece of furniture for entertaining, a combination TV, radio, and cocktail bar. This all-in-one entertainment center was designed for the host who wanted to mix a drink without missing their favorite show. Marilyn Monroe works out with dumbbells in 1952, showing a dedication to fitness that wasn't part of her public persona. She was an early advocate of weight training for women, years before it became a mainstream trend. A sun-tanned Arnold Schwarzenegger relaxes on a yacht in the late 70s, at the height of his bodybuilding fame. This was just after his Pumping Iron documentary made him a household name, and before Conan launched his movie career. This photo of Marilyn Monroe was taken during a session in July 1962, which would turn out to be her last. Known as The Last Sitting, the series captured a more casual and modern style, a departure from her typical studio portraits. Actress Jean Tierney, often called one of the most beautiful women in film history, relaxes on a gondola in Venice. During World War II, she worked countless hours as a hostess at the Hollywood Canteen, dancing and talking with servicemen. Albert Einstein and J. Robert Oppenheimer worked together at Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study in 1947. After the war, the two had complex discussions about the future of atomic weapons and the moral responsibility of scientists. In 1961, a TV celebrity dog named Fritz gets a professional shave with a straight razor for a publicity stunt. The patient boxer was reportedly very calm throughout the entire unusual grooming session. Soviet sailors in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, salute a veteran of World War II in 1989. The old soldier, having lost both legs in the war, stands at attention as best he can to return the gesture of respect. A sleek convertible arrives at Sacramento Municipal Airport, captured on a postcard from the 1960s. Back then, you could park just steps from the terminal, a far cry from today's massive parking garages and shuttle buses. Two Wendy's employees show off their striped uniforms for a promotional photo in the 1980s. The company's founder, Dave Thomas, insisted on a clean-cut, old-fashioned image for his staff to set Wendy's apart from its competitors. In the 1950s, some beauty pageants had a scientific angle, like this Miss Perfect Posture contest from 1956. To win the trophy, contestants not only had to stand straight, but also prove their perfect spinal alignment with an X-ray. The world held its breath as Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev met for the first time at the 1985 Geneva Summit. This initial handshake between the two adversaries began a dialogue that would eventually help to thaw the Cold War. A 1941 automobile gets a thorough cleaning in one of New York's early automated car washes. Before soft cloths and foam brushes, these early systems used a powerful barrage of high-pressure water jets to do the job. On the set of the 1989 classic Roadhouse, Patrick Swayze gets fighting tips from legendary kickboxer Benny the Jet Urquidez. Urquidez was the film's uncredited fight trainer and even had a small role as one of the henchmen. This New York City subway car from 1953 looks unusually quiet for a morning commute. The city was in the middle of a major newspaper strike, forcing riders to simply sit and stare ahead instead of disappearing behind their daily paper.